In this video, we're going to cover the misconception about people worried about talking to their friends and family about their MLM business. And, you know, I know a lot of people get this question a lot of times, Chris. And, you know, I think there's several reasons why people are concerned about talking to friends and family about their MLM business. What comes to mind when you hear this from somebody? Like, first of all, what do you think about it? And, you know, what's some of the reasons you think people are worried about dealing with this?
I think people are worried about dealing with this because they have this picture that they'll have to convince their friends and family, or be like a pushy salesperson, or coerce someone, or just shove information down their throat. And that can be from the example I gave in the previous video about my first network marketing experience, sitting with my two uplines, and come from that because I did not feel comfortable, and my friend that we called did not feel comfortable. And I think the second thing is it sometimes relates back to that previous question. I don't know if I know enough people. And so after I ask a couple clarifying questions, my answer usually goes down one or two paths, either telling people about the professional way we do this business and the way we sell the products, or letting people know that, hey, there are other avenues for meeting people, developing relationships, online marketing. And that also relates back to what I talked about in the previous video on expanding your Rolodex, your cell phone contacts, not only for building this business, but for doing other things down the road. Now, when it comes to explaining to people how we're not going to convince them or shove information down their throat, it's exactly what Jason covered in the communication training, where we're going to go out there and make connections. You're going to talk with people, but you're not going to show them the business or show them the product unless they actually have a reason to look for it. And you may develop them or you may not develop them depending on, you know, what they're looking for or what their goals are. And so I usually like to, again, relate to a story either from my own experience or that person's experience or background. And it's probably best if you jump in here, Jason, since you did the communication training and talk about, you know, what's a good way for someone to explain the professional way we do it versus that shoving down the throat or convincing.
Right. Well, and so first of all, your circle of influence is going to have friends and family in it. And the first thing I'll say is, you know, I used to run a law firm and we did normal advertising. You know, what law firms do is we do a lot of phone book, newspaper, radio ads. You know, it's a normal business. And first thing I'll say is, you know, we're no different in MLM than any other business. I don't know why people treat it that way. You can do all those things if you're with the right company. I know some companies don't allow that, but most progressive companies, most what I think good companies allow you to do all advertising mediums. It's just the way I feel about it. That's really an opinion. So I hang my hat on that, first of all. But second of all, say, you know, when we ran our law firm, do you think I'm not going to tell my friends and family what I do? It's retarded. Like, of course I am. And I don't think that's what your contacts are worried about. That's not what they're saying. They're not afraid to talk to people they know about what they do, but they want to do it when it's appropriate. I have people all the time tell me, yeah, I'm fine with it if they say something that makes sense. So again, that's somebody's common sense in that gut feeling where this just doesn't feel right. That's why when you had your experience in your first MLM, you're like, okay, this just doesn't feel right. Why? Well, number one, there was no connection, which is the connect step in our training, in a communication process. That's the worst part. I can't even believe there was no connection there between that big upline and your people, you know. But the worst part is the develop part. There's no bridge being built. And so when you connect with somebody and you have a relationship with somebody, you could already be connected. You have a relationship. You're talking to them for a long time. They're a friend or family member. I have friends and family members that don't even know what I do. I have some that are in my business. I have some that are customers. Now you're probably trying to figure out, Jason, you've been doing this for 10 years. How could you not possibly have people, everyone that you know what you do? Because it just wasn't appropriate. Wasn't appropriate to talk about it. If they ask me what I do, I describe it, but some people just don't. Or they're just the type of people that they don't have a focus on what you do for a living. They know a lot of other things about me. But they don't really care to know what I do for a living. It's just not important to some people. And that's fine. So, you know, it's never come up. But that's not to say that I don't have friends and family that are taking my product or in my business, because why did that happen? Because they said something. I continue to build relationships in my circle of influence. I continue to work on, staying in contact and just really being a good friend and family member. I honestly believe this business has made me better at being a friend or family member, because it's forced me from a business standpoint to build my Rolodex, to build my relationships, to talk to people, to stay in touch. Because within the days of email and internet and texting, most people do a terrible job of staying in touch with people. They really do. And so all I'm suggesting is you're going to do a better job with your friends and family members. So, is it about talking to them? Not really. But am I saying that you're not going to talk to them? Of course not. You may never talk to them about the business. You're going to stay in contact with them more. But when they say something that's appropriate for the business or your product or service, you're going to do it, and you better have a plan to do it. You better have, we have marketing methods in our team that we use when somebody mentions something that fits the situation. We have a personal endorsement both on business and product, and we actually have training that covers that. So that's something that people can benefit from. The point is, you need to have a plan, you need to have training in place and a marketing funnel and a process, so when these situations come up, you can talk about it. But you don't bring it up out of the blue, kind of like what happened with you. I think that's what people's biggest fear is.
Yeah, generally it is. And just to re-emphasize this point and sound like a broken record, you want to ask a couple clarifying questions to make sure you understand what they're saying. And usually when someone asks this question or a variation of it, they usually have a mental image about what they're going to be doing, whether it's because it's something they did themselves, like myself, or they've heard a horror story, or they saw something on 2020, or whatever. So I like a good question to say, it sounds like you've got a specific thing you're thinking about or an image floating around in your mind. What are you thinking about specifically? Yeah. And just pause, and they'll probably kind of him and haw and then tell you, and then boom, exactly what the issue is, and say, and sometimes the answer is simple. You know what? We don't do anything like that. Here's what we do instead. And like, oh, wow, that's great. And another point to emphasize is that network marketing is a long-term business for a long-term residual income, or at least that's the way we build it and we teach people to do it. And so one of the reasons I feel so comfortable in talking about this with people and training people in the style of our communication training is that I don't look at it as like, oh, I have to get this person in the next week or next month or next 2 months. We've been in here for almost a decade apiece, and I guarantee you we're going to keep doing our business in some form or the other pretty much for the rest of our lives. Yeah. Might not be as active now as we are now in 20 years, but I guarantee if I come across them in 20 years where my product could help them out or benefit them, or I'm at my 20 or 30-year-old high school reunion, and that's 20 years away from me, and that comes up, I will talk with the person about it. So I also have a long-term point of view in this business. I know Jason does as well. And so when you have that long-term view in building your business, that will come across with people, and then you will never be pushy or shoving information down someone's throat or trying to convince them to come in, because if you can help them out, great. If you can't, great. Or if it takes months or sometimes even a year or two to develop a person, you're not going to get stressed about it. You're not going to try to shove the person into something that they're not ready for, that they don't want to do.
Yeah, exactly. Well put.
Thank you. I've got, that's all the things on my mind for this video.
Yeah, again, just another misconception rooted around some mental picture somebody has, and it's figuring out what that mental picture is and then sharing with them, hey, I get it. That's not what we do. This is what we do. Would that be something you'd be interested in looking at? Could you do that? Yeah. It's done.